Welcome. This is Lynn Fraser with the Kiloby Center for the Radical Recovery Summit 2017. I have with me today Beverly Buncher with the Balm Recovery Institute, and she's going to introduce herself and tell you about the program, and we're going to have a discussion about how she got into the whole field of supporting families in recovery and how that relates to what we're talking about for the summit.
Hi, Lynn. It's so good to see you.
You too.
Hi, everybody. This is Beverly Buncher. My company is called Family Recovery Resources, and our school for families and for life coaches is called the Balm Institute. Balm stands for Be a Loving Mirror, and Be a Loving Mirror is the family recovery method that we use to help families blaze the trail to recovery in their homes. So what do we mean by that? We have a two-prong approach. We believe very strongly, and this is backed up by the experience of our coaches and by the research in the field, that the family can be their loved one's best chance at recovery. Often if the family gets well educated and has a transformative process of family recovery in their own lives, they can be there for their loved one in a powerful way that encourages recovery quite effectively. Of course, we can't guarantee that a loved one will get recovery because of a family's inner work, but when the family changes their attitudes, their behaviors, and the way in which they relate to themselves and their loved ones and each other, powerful things often happen, and we see it again and again in the many families who've gone through the Balm program, and even in the coaches who came for a career and often say, my gosh, I came for a career and my whole life transformed. It's a very powerful, exciting process that we have all gone through and that we offer, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, that's cool. I know at the Kiloby Center, Scott Kiloby talks about that a lot, that the families have their own process to go through and that we all need to do our own personal work, that it's not the identified person, the identified problem person that is the only one that has to do some work. We all have to do that too. Yeah. Could you just maybe take us through how you got to this point where you're offering this? I know that your institute has grown hugely in the last 3 or 4 years, and that you offer a really good program, but how did you get involved with that?
So one day I was living, I'll take this as quickly as I can, but I was living across the hall from my sister, and she knocked at the door and told me that she had gone into recovery. And as soon as I heard that, I decided I'd go to Al-Anon and I'd start to learn about family recovery and see if I could get some help. I was already in Overeaters Anonymous, and it was a very easy move for me to do that. And I went to Al-Anon, and I remember listening to Al-Anon and thinking, oh, these alcoholics, they're so cute. I've always dated alcoholics. I'm a little embarrassed having this conversation. I mean, like saying these alcoholics. But really, that's how I saw it at the age of 20, whatever I was, 23, I don't know. So, oh, I could marry an alcoholic. I know how to help them now because I'm in Al-Anon. And I guess that set something in motion. Within a year, I met my husband, and he was in active addiction. And I remember meeting him and saying, you know, we went on our first date. He came to the door, and I was on my way to an Al-Anon meeting that he was going to drop me off to. And he said, I hear you go to Al-Anon. That's cool. I said, you've heard of it? He goes, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. My mother goes to Al-Anon. I said, oh, are you recovered? He goes, nope, crazy as ever. And I figured he was being humble. Wrong. He was crazy as ever. And we had a kind of a bit of a roller coaster relationship. And I went to a lot of Al-Anon meetings, and I fell in love with this guy who was struggling with his addiction. And of course, until we got married, we moved to another town, until we were together 24/7, I really had no idea what I was dealing with. And once we were living in the same house, it was like, oh, what did I get myself into? And I'm going to these meetings, and everybody who's my age there who has a spouse who's a user is separating and divorcing. And I'm looking around those rooms and I'm going, wait a minute, this is supposed to help you help your loved one. And they said, no, it's supposed to help you help yourself. Now, I heard of 4 C's in Al-Anon. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it, but you don't have to contribute to it. And around a few months into my marriage, I hung on to that, and I ran into a lady at an Al-Anon luncheon. She took both of my hands and she looked me in the eye and she said, honey, give it about 1.5 years. Within 1.5 years, most of us who really take this seriously, our spouses get sober. Now, I want to tell you something. I never heard that before, and I've never heard it again at Al-Anon, but that was my life raft. So I kept going and I kept searching, and people kept telling me to get out. Other than that lady who came from, I don't know where, I don't know who she was. She was like some kind of a little angel, came into my life, told me that. And I remember my good friend told me about the 4 ends to an addict. She said, listen, there's only 4 ends to an addict. They either die, or they go to a mental institution, or they go to jail, or they get recovery. And you don't know which one's going to happen to Alan. You just don't know. He could die. And I hung up on her and I didn't talk to her for 2 weeks. She was an old family friend with a lot of years in recovery. And I started to face the situation that I was in, that I loved someone who was struggling with a life and death illness. So I started to do my own research. And for me, that meant looking into reading, studying every bit of Al-Anon literature, not what they were saying at meetings, but what I could get my hands on, working closely with a sponsor who had long-term recovery in her husband and in herself, and starting to put into practice some of the things that I was learning. And so I did. And I remember the first time that I put it into practice. My husband came home and he was jonesing. He was going out of his mind. His drugs didn't arrive. And he was running through the house trying to find something, anything, give it to me, like nuts. And normally I'd say, what are you doing? Stop it. Don't you know this is killing you? Instead, I just watched him. And I followed him around slowly, just, kept my distance. And I saw him find a vodka, which we didn't drink, neither of us. He pulled it out. It was a wedding gift. Opened it up and started guzzling. He guzzled down this big bottle of vodka, went into the bedroom, passed out, and woke up, threw up all over the floor. I'm sorry to be so visual. Threw up all over the floor and passed out again. I checked to make sure that he was alive and that he wasn't going to choke. Mm-hmm. I went to sleep in the other room. I took my stuff and went into the den and slept. In the morning, the house smelled, it reeked. He came out and he said, what happened? I said, sweetheart, you came home. I guess you couldn't find any drugs. You ran around the house. You found alcohol. You guzzled it. I just described what had happened to him. And he goes, really? I did that? He didn't have any clue. I said, yeah, you did. He goes, why didn't you clean it up? It really smells in there. I said, honey, if I'd cleaned it up, number one, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have believed me. You would have said, what are you talking about? And second of all, I don't think it's my responsibility to clean that up. Do you? And I love you so much, but I got to run to work. I kissed him on the cheek and I left. And that was very empowering for me. Mm-hmm. And what I had done was I had given him the facts and didn't judge him. I objectively observed what I saw. I dealt with my emotions within me rather than throwing them up on him. When he was better, lucid, I told him what had happened, and then I exited. We call that Be a Loving Mirror, the Be a Loving Mirror method. I developed it into a 7-step method. And what happened was, over the years, I retired from education. I became a coach. And I helped some of my sponsees to do this. We didn't call it Be a Loving Mirror. We just called it, this is how you talk to somebody. And then I became a coach, and I was a principal before I was a coach. And everyone said, oh, you'll be an education coach. And I said, no. And family members started to come to me. Addicts started to come to me. And I really prayed about it. And I did a lot of inner work to find my life purpose. And I found out that my purpose was to help families affected by a loved one's addictive challenges find their way. And that my mission was to help all families blaze the trail to recovery in their homes. I have a few missions, but that was the one that I was to focus on. So I prayed about it and I wrote about it. And what we call today the 12 principles started to come out on the paper. And I started to teach them to my clients because my clients refused to go to Al-Anon. And in a way I understood, because they don't tell you, this is what you do for you, this is what you do for your loved one. They really don't give you that straight out. You have to dig for it. You have to find a good sponsor with a lot of years who's done it herself. And so I started to just try to figure out how I could help people. I started with the actions, like take care of yourself, be loving, set boundaries, get support. And people said, I'm not doing that. Why should I? It's his problem. So then I went back in and thought more about it. And I researched, I did more research. I did a lot of research on evidence-based practices over the years. I don't know that we called it that back then, but that's what I was doing,
Right.
even back when, as few as there were, 30 some years ago. And I just started to write them down. And so I started to put them into other principles. And I didn't call them principles back then either, but the family has a crucial role to play. And that's one where we really explain to families, you're always either contributing to the substance use disorder or you're contributing to recovery. So our whole program is designed to teach families how to contribute to recovery. And so principle 1 lays the whole thing out. Principle 2, change happens in stages. And we use Prochaska Di Clemente's stages of change model. And we teach that in motivational interviewing. And that combined with our Be a Loving Mirror conversation is a very powerful antidote to the lack of communication, lack of openness that often happens in families. They say in the dysfunctional family, there's 3 things that people live by: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. So our program is about empowering families to talk, to trust, and to feel, and to direct these things in ways that really work for them. And the third is letting go of results, but without giving up, without giving in. We don't say let go of the addict. This idea, let go and let God, that it means turn your back. How do you turn your back on someone who's in dire straits? Come on.
Right.
Let's go beyond that. Let's get it very clear. So we teach families how to let go of the anxiety that makes them want to run or control, and then figure out what really needs to be done here, and don't give up and don't give in to manipulation. And the fourth one is you can be your loved one's best chance. And we show them how, out of denial, out of enabling, into awareness, into helping. And of course, I'm telling you this very quickly. Once I started to teach families those first 4, then I could talk to them about self-care, being loving, being, setting boundaries, getting support.
Right.
So there's a lot more. But what happened was this evolved over a 3-year period, getting the 12 principles. The Be a Loving Mirror thing came out because I was writing, and I was writing and writing and writing about all this. And then I thought, well, gee, this idea of talking to someone face to face and showing them, saying the facts, that's like being a loving mirror. So I started to use that term, and I started to get a lot of responses. Send me stuff on this. What does this mean?
Right.
Then that became our, I guess you could say, brand. We're trademarked in it. The Be a Loving Mirror method of family recovery is about everything you do for self-transformation first, and then for transformation of the conversation process. That's our method, and it's quite powerful. It includes 12 principles, 7 steps, and a 1-year family program where we walk people through the process. Some families go through it in 3 weeks, 12 weeks. Some families stay with it for a whole year. Families come in, they see success with it, they leave because everything's cured, then there's challenges, they come back, they have it for a year, so they have that luxury.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's a longer term. It's not something you can do for a few weeks or a month and that
No, not successfully.
it's so complex, the patterns, and they're so long-standing. Could you give us maybe an example of some of the people that you've worked with, and what the challenges have been and how they've worked with it through the program?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, before we had these principles and steps, I would just try to teach people everything I knew, and it would take me about 3 years. And it would be a process of they'd get it, there would be a relapse, they'd freak out, do all their old stuff. I'd walk them through. Here's what I'm seeing. Is this working? And it would have to happen through a few cycles before they'd go, ah, and start to shift. And I started thinking, we really don't have that time. And we really don't have that time now with the heroin epidemic and
Right.
the overdoses. So we developed principles and steps. And once we brought people into our program, the complete program, which there are up to 8 calls a week now, or not 7 calls a week. We're about to add another one. Once we started to really build the program, people could dive in. And what I found was I would have a client and I would be working with them a couple of times a week. And then they would start to use the materials and they'd be listening to recordings all the time, 24/7, the ones who are really committed. And they're working it through in their mind about this complete mental shift. And then they take the 7 steps course where they really experience transformation. And in a very short amount of time, they've become a loving mirror. And we see families just being different. Like their loved one does something that just before would have driven them to just total upset. And they look them in the eye and they say, I love you so much. Let's talk tomorrow. And tomorrow they have it all written out. They have their list of just the facts and they share it with love. And if necessary, they get help quickly. So the process that we see families going through is one of having a community of support where they can learn a tremendous amount about substance use disorder, other use disorders, and start to put it in practice in their own lives. We have lessons, 12 lessons for the principals, and a weekly call, 2 of them actually, one in the day, one in the evening, where we have experts coming on. Today we have an expert, an addictions therapist who's an expert in psychodrama. She's going to be on in 2 hours talking about how to use psychodrama. I mean, we have treatment center directors who come on and talk about triangulation. Anything that is an issue that relates to our principles, we bring experts in so that our families can learn. So we've been told that we give the equivalent of a PhD in addiction and recovery to families. And if families choose to, let me try to think of another family. I had a family member come in. She was angry. Her husband had been enabling her son for years and years and years. And she had no luck in help in fixing it. So she just sort of backed out and got into her career. All of a sudden, her son calls her up and says, I'm in trouble. I'm with the police. I'm on heroin. She takes over at that point, gets him into treatment. And that happened to be a treatment center that was connected to us. They brought her to me. I worked with her. The 12 principles was all we had at that time. She joined that class and I coached her. And she came in with anger and she said, I just hate them. I don't want to, rah, 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 rah. And we just worked on moving anger and hatred into love and acceptance. Not so that she could just go, oh, but so that she could be effective in her thinking, speaking, and behaving to positively impact over the course of and she's been on your families, if your families are listening to this, this is Leslie. You can listen to a lot of Leslie's talks. And she has a son who's been sober 5 years now and another who practices harm reduction now for a few years. And all through the work that we've done together and utilization of the principles and the resources and because she's been willing to change her mind. All of the problems we have in our lives are right in here.
Right.
So our process, just like yours, is about changing one's mind. So we call the first 4 principles the attitudinal shift. The second 4 principles are the action principles. Then we go into 3 principles about relationship. After the attitudinal shift takes place, people take the 7 steps to be a loving mirror course. And the first 3 steps are totally about inner transformation.
So that's a really key point. And you've mentioned anxiety that underlies addiction or that underlies enabling. And now you brought in anger as well. And really, we can't be a loving mirror or be contributing to recovery if we're being triggered all the time. And
Right.
so that's the reason why we do this inner work, partly the reason.
Absolutely.
So we're not just people aren't just crashing into us all the time and then we flare up and then all of what we know would be effective goes out the window.
Absolutely. The whole thing of really working on self to our first step of our transformation process is be the peace you wish to see in the world. And families go, how can I be peaceful when all of this is going on? Well, by the time they get to that step, they've gone through the first 4 principles and found out they do have a role. That if they're being triggered at every moment, they're really useless in the process of helping their loved one. And they may be the toxic contributor to their loved one going back out when they come home from treatment. So we work very hard in helping families have a transformation before their loved one gets home so that they can start to partner with the treatment center as they're going through it. And then afterwards be there in a very positive way. And you're absolutely right. I've had a few families over the years that have had to go inpatient themselves because no matter what work we did, they just couldn't. And we're not clinicians as you are. We are coaches, but we're able to help people move in a way that will help them make big changes in their lives. If the change isn't happening in all the different ways that we're able to help you, we know that more help is needed and we will refer out. We don't pretend to know what we don't know.
So I'm just thinking back to when you were talking about Al-Anon and you've had a long history of it and you did a lot of research into what the basic philosophies are of it. And it doesn't, of course, always work that way. Like you said, you need to find a sponsor who's very well experienced with it and really understands it and is in recovery themselves. So if you were speaking with someone who's in Al-Anon or in 12-step groups, what's the difference with your program? And do they have to be an Al-Anon fan, or if they hate Al-Anon, how would that impact their work with you?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the things that we want to say is that, I'm a 12-stepper, but that doesn't mean you have to be. you
Mhm.
know. And I developed my program for people who just didn't want it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it because they needed help too. And one of the things that happens sometimes in Al-Anon is you can go over a course of years and you can pull out tremendous wisdom. And they have beginners meetings where they'll really get you started. But if you have an immediate problem, the focus is on you and you're thinking, how do I help? How do I help? How do I help? So what we say is we have a 2-pronged approach. We help families get their lives back,
Mhm.
which really happens well in Al-Anon. And we help them help their loved ones get their lives back. So
And
we
that's
can
not
go
so
right
much a
out.
part of Al-Anon.
Well, you will find that in Al-Anon, but you really have to stick around, dig deep, and have somebody who is an expert in the steps and in Al-Anon to walk you through that. Or you have to do the kind of deep studying that I did 30 some years ago. The original Al-Anons, most of them weren't going anywhere. They were there to help their husbands. They started Al-Anon to help their husbands. I mean, and of course they wanted to help themselves, but it's not like that today. Al-Anon has those 4 C's. If you go to most meetings up until about a year ago, and I hear the 4th C is coming back, good to
Mhm.
hear, Al-Anon, but up until about a year ago, if you went into Al-Anon, you saw 3 C's. Didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. When I got into Al-Anon in 84, the 4th C was still there, but it was on its way out because divorce had become very easy and people were like, and I remember going to an Ar-Anon meeting, and I was leading the meeting. And a mom said to me, "Why do you stay with him? We're stuck. What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I love my husband." So we in the Balm, we have 7 C's, and here's what they are. And thank you, Al-Anon, for the first 3.5, because we build on that. Didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. And Al-Anon says you don't have to contribute to it. We say you can contribute to recovery. Period. You can. Will you? Will it guarantee? But you can contribute, not cause, contribute to recovery. 5th C, this is really important. You are connected to your loved one on a level that transcends their struggles. This is not, it's not like, what's wrong with you being with that sot? This is a soul level connection. We are souls having a physical experience. It's my perspective anyway. And that's what it was written from, this idea that, you can also say we are God's children, all of us. People have diseases. If your husband has a heart attack, are you going to leave him? No, you're connected to him. He's your husband. The problem with these disorders is the behaviors. First of all, the disorder tells you don't have a disorder. So you're talking to someone about that. You talk to someone about their heart attack. Hey, you had a heart attack. I know. Hey, you have problems with alcohol and drugs. I do not. I'm just fine. So that's a real mind messer.
Right.
And then the other thing is the stigma, because of the behaviors that people do and because of the legal implications, blah, blah, blah. The stigma is awful. And there's not a whole lot of, we have families in our program who have just made tremendous progress in helping their loved ones. And one mom tells a story about how she had one son with addiction and one son with a heart ailment. When word of the heart ailment got out, the whole community gathered round, food was brought, such support you never saw. With her son, the one who had addictive problems,
Nothing.
They were so isolated. They were so alone.
Mm-hmm.
So, getting back to your initial question about Al-Anon, I love the steps and I love Al-Anon. Saved our family. I found a lot of what we do in the 12-step rooms, adapted it, and also in evidence-based practice and research and coaching, training, and all kinds of things. Do you have to love Al-Anon? No. You have to be willing to look at life in a way that might give you some power to change your mental state and your relationship and potentially help your loved one do the same. So if you're open to that, if you're open to being there for your loved one in a powerful way and getting your own life back, this is a good program for you.
Well, it seems too that one of the things I love about your program is that you train recovery coaches, and that the people that you're training are people who've been through the program and who are in family recovery. And it's such a great way to deepen our own recovery when we work with other people.
It's so true. Isn't it amazing? My favorite part of graduation, every time another group goes through the Family Recovery Life Coach Training Program, which is now an accredited International Coach Federation Coach Training Program, very exciting. But every time there's a graduating class, one of the grads will say, I came here for a career and I got personal transformation.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who haven't talked to their loved ones for years, came to the coach training so that they could figure out how to rectify it in their mind, if nowhere else, healed the relationship. Sometimes we had one family where a many, many years relationship, they had been told, stay away, keep them away, don't go near them. With the Balm, we say, draw them close, be connected. Enjoy them for who they are in this moment. We don't know how long we will have them. And Mom says because of the Balm, she got to know her son again for a couple of years before he passed it. He didn't make it. Most of our families, we had another mom coach trainee, who is now, these women are now coaches, whose daughter was struggling mightily and she couldn't figure it out, but she was a counselor, so she decided to become a coach. She got into the prerequisites, which, as you said, all of our coaches have to go through our family program first. She's in the prerequisites and she's going, I never thought of that. Well, I could do that. Within 3 months, she did the balm thoroughly, got a coach, daughter got sober. It's almost a year now. And these stories we hear again and again and again.
Right.
Personal transformation. Not all of our coaches are family members, but they care. They care about this illness and moving it off the stigma into something that we can work with. And we have another coach who didn't have any addiction in her family, but she and her husband help addicts on the street. And
Oh,
she got this training. They lost one of the young men. That's what brought her to us.
mm,
And oh my gosh, it's helped her so much. And I could go on and on and on. But our coach training program, what happened was I was coaching people, and I do a lot of meditation prayer, and I got this message that I was to help families blaze the trail, all families blaze the trail to recovery in their homes. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? Oh, I guess I better train some coaches. So I started mentoring life coaches to work with in recovery with families, and I couldn't teach them everything I knew in a 1-hour mentor. So then they asked me if I'd start a school. So I started an advanced school for coaches. And what I found is that a lot of the coaches, their training was good enough for them to help someone find a career, but it wasn't strong enough to withstand what they were going to go through when they worked with families. So I found one of our top coaches in the country who developed a lot of what we know today as the ICF, was one of the key people in that whole process. Started one of the first coaching schools. She helped me write a strong life coaching curriculum. And we have developed a complete coach training program that creates extremely strong coaches, life coaches, and family recovery life coaches. And we're now adding a continuing education course in recovery life coaching, which I am a recovery life coach. And we're teaching our coaches and other life coaches to now work directly with the loved one.
okay. Right. So it seems to take some of the element of chance out of it. Like if you go to Al-Anon and you're in a good group that are really focusing on the steps and really working on a deep level, and you find a sponsor who has a lot of experience and knowledge, then you're going to have a more transformational experience than if you get into a group where people are kind of floundering. You know, one of the things about the Kiloby Center program is that Dr. Kay Vout is a licensed clinical psychologist, and she would work with people on what you've been talking about, triangulation and communication and how to be supporting recovery instead of enabling addiction. And we need that. And then the part that I would do is more along the let's get at the anxiety and the underlying what's driving it. And so that's kind of the basis of an effective program. And you're doing in a very, in a much larger way, you've got a very solid program of let's get some education so that the families can look at it and go, okay, number one, I'm not that identified addict isn't the only problem in this system. It's a system of dysfunction, and we can all have a part. We all have some work to do. And then what is the best evidence-based research around that says these are some things that you can do that are very practical, they're right away, and you don't have to have that luck factor of maybe finding
Right,
someone who can help because it's
right.
training, it's
Yes,
systematized.
yes,
I
yes.
love that about the program. I think everybody can just jump in, get what they need, and really start to work on a deep level.
Yeah, yeah. And what I love about your program is we're such a good fit together because, we do the education piece and we take everything to a deep level. You take everything to a deep level. You put those two things together and people,
Mhm.
they can just soar.
And maybe this is a good place just to let people know too that the Kiloby Center Family Program is now a part of your program. And so by the time this is aired, people will be able to go directly into your program through the Kiloby Center. I'm
Kiloby.
really, really excited about that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
we're looking forward to having you guys come on the Daily Balm and talk about our principles. All of our treatment centers are invited to bring their experts onto the Daily Balm so that their families can hear their experts talking about these principles, which are universal principles of family recovery that we've just organized and systematized in a way. You know, my whole thing was I wanted to make two things first. I wanted to make the relationship with the spiritual first.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew if I did that, there would be a lot of people who would go, "Oh, I'm out of here." So we made it number 9. I wanted to make support first if we weren't going to do that. But I knew that people would go, I can do this myself. I don't need support. So what we did was we put all the things you have to do first if you want to make a good impact in the first 8 principles. And then people go, how am I supposed to do that? Well, there's a million ways to get support and develop your inner relationships with the spiritual, with self, with others. And then you'll be a loving mirror.
Right.
Yeah,
So you're helping people to decrease their anxiety and build their resources.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do appreciate the way in which you guys go right to the core.
So speaking of the core, what do you have to say about trauma in relation to addiction?
I'd say that I don't have the statistics, but we do find that many loved ones, we call the person who's directly dealing with the substance use disorder, gambling disorder, whatever disorder it is, the loved one.
Mhm.
So many, many loved ones had traumatic incidents in their lives that either caused, contributed to, or came about as a result of use. And the family members are sort of like deer in the headlights after years and years and years of watching their loved one be precariously on the edge of life and death. So trauma is the name of the game.
Mhm.
This is what people need to heal from. And again, we are not clinicians, but we do have methods to help people understand what they're dealing with and move them forward. And if they're not able to, we find people who can help them. We have a couple of our coaches are also therapists, and we always welcome therapists who want to be coaches as well. Um, One is an EMDR specialist, and she's just started working with specific trauma-based work
Mhm.
with loved ones. But we know that we are just, one of many people who have these skills, and um, we really value being able to work with places like yours that have in-depth ability to move people forward through their trauma. I mean, it's critical.
Well, it really is. And I know when Scott Kiloby opened the center, he very quickly saw that trauma was at the root. And a lot of the recovery centers don't deal with trauma right away. They feel like it's not, they can't deal with it right away. So they're dealing first with the addiction. And Scott's actually completely turned that around and said, unless we deal with the trauma, and when you're in a treatment center, you have a structure and a support where you could do that. And his methods is a mindfulness based center. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can work with trauma and that we can heal what's going on as driving the addiction.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the people that I've been interviewing for the summit as well, it's a real universal acknowledgement that trauma is at the root of it. And some
Absolutely.
of the centers now are starting to deal with the trauma first.
We have a 3-prong approach. We have 2 prongs: get your life back, help your loved one get theirs back, but a 3-prong approach to family recovery. And the first one is information. We provide families and pre-coaches with a tremendous amount of information about everything from trauma to addiction to recovery to families who are, just really information coming at you. We have
Mhm.
over 150 recordings now, uh, 10 to 15 on each principle. Fine. But the 7 steps method, that's our second prong. And we call that the transformation prong of our program. And the first 3 steps are inner transformation. And it is really a process of becoming mindful, having a daily practice, becoming able to observe objectively what's going on around you. So if you're starting to go deep within and become more objective, what's going to come up? The trauma, the emotion, the upset. And then our third step is become aware of your inner emotional landscape. And that's where we have lots and lots of different methods for people to address the feeling, their feeling state around what has happened to them and what they are facing.
Right.
And in some cases, it's perfect. We're a perfect match for them in terms of the long-term dealing. For some, they need to get more help, and we encourage it. We often work with therapists, with other coaches, with clinicians, with treatment centers. We are big into team work, and we like to call it, rather than case management, care management. That's what we invite our coaches to do, to get professional relationships with other people, with other healers, with people who are involved in helping clients and families move forward in their lives. And let's work together to see how we can partner on this and be there for the family in a powerful way.
It with such a crisis as what we're facing right now,
Mhm.
all hands need to be on deck. Everybody
Right.
needs to really
Absolutely.
be contributing.
And the third prong, so it's information, transformation, and finally support. And
Ah,
so the transformation is we offer 7 steps classes, day and evening,
mhm.
8-week course, taking you through the 7 steps. You're working with a buddy. There's demos. There's lessons. There's activities. There's exercises. The support is, let's say you don't have a coach, but you'd like to get more support with what you're learning. Twice a week, we have coaching sessions that are open to the groups. Sometimes there's only one person who shows up, which is nice for that person. Sometimes we have 5 or 10, and there's just a coach there every week, twice a week. We also have a journaling course, Journal Your Way to Balm Recovery, which is a very powerful way
Mm,
to um, look at your life as a loving mirror for yourself, to be a loving mirror to yourself. And
right.
finally, we're offering, that'll be coming out in a couple of months, the 12 principles in meditation, which we take each principle and we teach about the principle and offer a half-hour meditation for the families to go deep within on that principle. So we're approaching everything from many, many sides. And we do agree that it's that inner wound that needs to be tended.
Right. Right. So I'm interested to know if you have a quote or a saying that really informs your work.
Oh, yeah. I have a few.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and share them all.
So one is that, oh gosh, and I just had this one up the other day, and it's about peace of mind.
Mhm.
That this is not the exact quote, but this is the idea. That peace of mind is a treasure. How do you get peace of mind? By having peace with those in your environment, by having peace with yourself, by having peace with your creator. So you could call it with the universe, with whatever you want. I call it with your creator.
Mhm.
And it is only when you have peace in all of these areas that you can be truly at peace. And that guides me because in the Balm, we make every effort to tend to all of those relationships, that with the spiritual, that with self, that with others. The other quote is, your children are not your children. They are the children of life's longing for itself. They come from you, but they are not of you. Seek to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. And I may have said it out of order. It's Khalil Gibran, my absolute favorite author.
Mhm.
And to me, for families where there is a loved one who is affected by addiction, when it's your child, understanding that they are an individual on their journey. And you can
Right.
walk that journey with them without expectation, but with bold approaches to be advocates for their recovery. That's what we're all about. And even in a relationship, with another person, your lives are intertwined, but they are not one life. They are two lives. So
Right.
you be there in a positive way for your loved one, if you have the tools, and we provide those.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point. And I think when there's that fear, especially around children with addiction issues, that there's such a lot of fear that it kind of narrows down into I need to make them I need to keep them safe, I need to make them stop. And it becomes a real takeover.
Yes. Ultimately, we're afraid that or they're going to die.
Yeah.
And we gently put that out on the table.
Right.
It's essential that it be faced. And our third principle, as I shared earlier, was it's important to let go without giving up or giving in. So, what are we letting go of? I've got to keep him alive. Well, if you're like this, you're not going to be very successful because you're going to be so caught up in it that you can't think clearly. But if you say, I'm going to do everything that I can, I don't have power over the result. And being obsessed with it in this way is not helpful. So I'm going to advocate for his life, learn all about how best to help someone with this problem, and not give in to the manipulations that his or her dis-ease is causing them to attempt. Really, I mean, this is tough stuff, but
It is.
families need to know that this is an active process based, and it's most powerful when it's based on clear inner peace. And so we know we don't have a lot of time. A family comes in, I just want to get to work. We're working on all ends at once. We're educating you, we're giving you powerful mindfulness, we're teaching you how to help them. We have a transformation course that teaches you that. We have support of coaches and group. There are coaches that we have that you may want to hire, or you may have a coach at your own treatment center that you want to use, but you're going to do this best with support, and we're here for you to help you gain that.
So we're just about getting to the end of our time.
Oh, wow. That went
I know
fast.
it goes so quickly. But I have two questions. So one is at the end, we're asking everybody to, if there's somebody, in this case, a family, a person who has a loved one with addiction, what would their next steps be? But before we get to that,
Mhm.
I'd like to ask you for the person who is the loved one, who is the person with the substance use addiction or whatever their addiction is, and they have a family pattern that's distressing to them. Do you
Mhm.
have any suggestions for that person? How do they deal with the people in their family who might be enabling them?
Yeah. So is this person someone who is still caught up in the struggle themselves?
Well, I'm thinking of when I was at the Kiloby Center in the winter, and I was working with some of the young men that were there, and they were talking about going home to parents who were still drinking in their Sunday dinner, or going home and having the same kind of neglect, or going home and one young man said, I'm 23, I've been in 17 recovery centers. Every time I screw up, I just get sent away. So obviously the family members need to do their work. But do you have any suggestions for the person with the addiction who's dealing with a dysfunctional family and being let down, and there's all kinds of dynamics there, but what would you say to that person?
Right. We are all people in relationship with each other. And just as we teach the families how to be a loving mirror, the loved one can be a loving mirror. One of the beautiful things that happens when families start to do this with their loved ones is their loved ones take note and do it back. So I'd invite you to be a loving mirror with your family. And you can do that in a few ways. First of all, work on your own mindfulness practice so that you become more imperturbable, more immune to their challenges. observe those challenges objectively, become aware of what's going on inside of you, the churn, and deal with it with your coach, with your therapist, so that you get strong within. And then document what you see and hear. The things that you know about how mom has been behaving or how your wife has been behaving that you now know are irritants to you and potentially contribute to you trigger you to go off the deep end. Jot those behaviors down, not with anger. Not the first time you might just journal and get it all out, but then go through it and find the things that they've been doing and get the facts down on paper. And at the appropriate time, have a loving conversation with the help of your therapist, your coach, your clinician, about what you're seeing and hearing. We say that 99% of the time, a loving, balm conversation will not require a boundary because it will go from heart under the radar of denial to heart. Sometimes a boundary is needed. So let's say that you've never had a conversation like that. In the past, you've either succumbed or you've screamed or you've run. So you plan this conversation, and preferably you have one of your coaches or counselors with you so you're safe. And you start to let them know about how their behavior is affecting you. And you recommend some sort of family help to them. Your treatment center may have a wonderful program. You may want to guide them to the balm. And you just let them know about it. At a certain point, you may have to set a boundary, such as, in order for me to come home, you will need to be in a family program that is ongoing, such as the balm or such as whatever is being offered that you know is powerful and helpful. The other thing that you can do is we are in the process of writing the balm for loved ones. So an adjunct to what you're learning and working on with treatment is you can learn the 12 principles and 7 steps as a loved one. And when you get into the balm in that way, you have access to all the family stuff so you can deal with family members as well. You know, I found this really interesting. I went to CODA at one point, Codependence Anonymous. It was filled with people from NA. And I said, what are you guys doing here? You're addicts. This was, 15 years ago. And they said, NA tells us that at our core, we're codependents. And that's why we're here. And that woke me up to an understanding that they are taught that that's their core addiction. I don't know if they're still taught that, but they were at that time. We are all in relationship with each other, healing our relationships, the trauma and the communication skills is key to all of this. And at the core is becoming mindful so that we're able to observe ourselves and how we react so that we can turn a reaction to a response, and others and how they are reacting so that their reactions don't have to become our triggers. We can go, wow, look at that. Look at what mom's running that game again. Isn't that interesting? And to think that in the past, it set me off, but it doesn't have to. That's mom's stuff. I love my mom, but I'm not going to go there because that would hurt me. So that's what I would say to someone who is struggling.
That's awesome.
And
So the answer to the other part of the question, the other side, would be, in a way, probably be a mirror of what you said to the loved one. But do you want to just kind of sum up? So
Yeah.
somebody's got a person that they're really in fear about, and there's an addiction going on that's really severe. What would your first few steps be?
Yeah. So start to look at what you've got going there. What are the facts that you're facing? And just start to jot some down. Be aware, jot. Try to pull yourself back a little from the high emotion. At the same time, if you're in need of immediate help, don't sit around. You're listening to this summit, call the Kiloby Center to get your loved one help. Call us, or the Kiloby Center can connect you with us. or whichever treatment professionals you choose to work with, but get help. Get help for your loved one. Don't think that getting them help is your answer. Treatment is just the beginning. It's not the end. It's not the be all and end all. As Lynn said, some people go through 13, 15, 17, 19 treatment centers. Let's stop our contribution to them getting so upset that they need treatment again. We don't cause them to have relapse, but man, we can make their lives pure hell. And stress and trauma are related to relapse. And people in relationship cause each other stress and trauma. So look at yourself. How am I contributing to making this situation work? It's hard. It's hard to see, because really it's much easier to say, oh God, how did I get a kid like this? How did I get a husband like this? How did I get a daughter like this? How did I get these rotten parents? Hey, guess what? They are who they are. You are who you are. You can't fix them. You can fix you. And in the process of that, learn how to contribute to their getting better too. Join us. We're going to help you. We're going to help you with that.
All right. Well, that was wonderful to go in depth like that with you, both personally. You have a lot of experience, and also with all of the people that you work with. And I love it that you're developing a program for the people with addiction as well, because those are all obviously very connected. So as we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to say?
Well, I want people to know that, number one, we're really thrilled to be working with the Kiloby Center. I've been a follower of Scott's work for quite a while now, and I have total respect for the work he does. He's one of our speakers on the Balm, and his message is our message. Go within, clear the cobwebs, become at peace, and become recovered. It's there for you. It's there for you. It's there for you as a family member. It's there for you as a loved one. We're here for you. And if you would like to learn more about our program, would this be a good time to give out?
Yeah. Let's get the website address and the contact. How can they get a hold of you?
Okay. It's familyrecoveryresources.com. You'll find information there about how to help families. On the front, it says need help. Click here. We will within 24 hours get back to you. My email, in case for some reason there's a technology glitch, bbuncher@familyrecoveryresources.com. The company phone number, 888-998-BALM, be a loving mirror, 2256, if your phone doesn't have those numbers, 888-998-2256. You can also contact info@familyrecoveryresources.com. I have a book coming out next month. I'm very excited about it. Be a loving mirror. Family recovery that works. So
we'll put that link up here too.
Thank you. I'll let you know when that's out.
Yeah.
I guess that's really it. We have classes for families. We have an accredited coach training program for people who want to work with families. We have CCEs for certified life coaches, and we have coaches who are available to work with families and loved ones. And we're also, we work with treatment centers like the Kiloby Center, and we will make referrals. We'll help you find the right place for you. So we're thrilled to be working with you guys, and we appreciate your vote of confidence as well.
We're very happy with the arrangement too. It's going to be a great help for our families. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing the interview and taking the time to do this. And it's been really great to learn about the program and your recovery coaching and all of that, but also just to have some perspective on what it is that really works, what are the underlying principles. And you've got it very organized so that it's easy for people to learn and to assimilate and do the transformation that they have to do to make this work. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Go to kilobycenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, to see the full schedule of speakers and to register to watch these free online September 23rd and 24th in the Radical Recovery Summit 2017.